All right. We are live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to
Hello.
Q.
Hi.
And we have a myriad of lovely ladies who are joining us today to have a discussion with everybody. We are hosting, and I'm very proud and honored to be hosting the Women of Deconversion. They usually host on the first Monday of every month on the Secular Hangouts Channel. I stole them. Today. So I get to have them on my channel, but the link is in the description down below. So please, please, please sub to Secular Hangouts so that you can get more of this type of content and so that you can see them at the beginning of every month. And I frequently participate since I didn't give them a choice and just kind of crashed their hangout. Was like, I'm one of you now.
My friends.
Great. So I'm going to give each of you an opportunity to introduce yourself down the line. We also have another special guest today. Some of you may recognize. I don't know. She doesn't look familiar to me, but people tell me they know who she is. Her name is Kate, and she has a channel called Bionic something.
Bionic Dance.
Bionic Dance. I knew that for the record.
Okay.
You were on my first live stream. How could I not know? Okay. But anyway, so I'm going to get everybody to go down the line, and then I'm going to briefly introduce what we're doing. So I will start with Courtney because she is to my far left, and I'll go straight down the line. So let everybody know who you are and introduce yourself really quickly.
Hi, I'm Courtney. I help with Atheist Edge YouTube channel, and I also am president of Metroplex Atheists. It's a local community group, and centered around education, and I've also just been doing some other things around sex education and some activism things. So it's by title, yeah, that's mostly it. My degree is in psychology, so I tend to kind of stay in that topic a lot. And I'm looking to find a PhD program to join probably next fall, probably around deconversion of at least destructive ideologies, things like white supremacist groups and ISIS, things like that. So there's some really interesting research going on around that. So I'm not sure where I'll end up, but that's me.
Awesome. So we will go next with Christine. Oh, you're muted, Christine. You have to unmute.
I know. I was like, oh, I didn't know I was from left to right. Okay, I'm next. Hi, I'm Christine. Heather and I do a podcast, Forsaking Faith, together. It's just about our journey through deconversion. I'm old, a mom.
Me too.
I just got my master's in applied math, but I hate applied math. So so I am I'm just here because I really want to help people with this process, this deconversion process, and that's what Secular Hangouts is about. And I'll talk about that more. But yeah, Christine. Hi.
Hi, and thanks, Christine. We'll go with Heather next.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Heather, and yes, I'm Christine's other half. So I also host the podcast Forsaking Faith, and I am currently starting my 5th year of my PhD in English literature. So that's what I'm doing. I live in a state in the southeast region of the U.S. And yes, Christine and I started our podcast. Well, we've been working on it for about a year, and our episodes are out now every week. So yes, so that's my story. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And now it is Kate's turn. Kate.
Hello. So, yes, my name is Kate. I'm also known as Bionic Dance. By training, I'm an animator, but most of what I do on my channel is I take other people's religious videos and explain why they're being chowder-headed. It's a lot of fun. I try to put out multiple videos a week. So go and subscribe, or I will make you watch while I destroy everything you've ever cared about.
There you go. And last but not least, we have the beautiful, the lovely Rachel.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Rachel. So I have a YouTube channel, Rachel in Reality, and on Twitter, I'm Rach in Reality. You guys are a little older than me, not like that much older, but sorry. But anyways, so I finished the university degree. I started a second one, and then I deconverted from Christianity, and now I don't know what I'm doing with my life, but I'm figuring it out and meeting lovely, nice people like you guys while I'm figuring it out. So there's me.
Thanks, you guys. Thank you all for introducing yourself. So now we're going to jump into the topic. So there's a series that's going to be starting with the Women of Deconversion on the 7 deadly sins. And today we are starting with vanity. So I'm interested to see where this conversation goes. I'm not vain. Definitely not at all. So I will throw it to you guys, and I'm just going to be a passive participant who probably won't shut up, but I'm not going to. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we actually were talking about how vanity also is pride. So for those of you that will be talking about both pride and vanity. Yeah, so I was thinking if we've, have been doing Women of Deconversion for a while, and I wanted to do something that, was focused. And so I was like, hey guys, let's talk about sinning. Because it's the most fun. After you deconvert, you're like, I can sin now. I don't have to care. So I'm pretty excited about that. So I wanted so ladies, how do you feel about the series that we're starting?
I'm excited about it. I think it's good to explore what makes a sin a sin.
Yeah,
so
I think it's
what from a moral perspective makes like a classical Christian sin a sin from a secular perspective. So what is it about vanity outside of a biblical perspective that would make it, detrimental or a quality that you don't want to manifest?
Right. Yeah.
And are there opportunities where sometimes, I mean, especially pride, vanity is probably a little bit more of a loaded word than pride, but there's opportunity for pride to be something that's fantastic, because if you have pride in something that you've done, and something that you have done is fantastic for others, and that motivates you to continue along that vein.
Yeah.
If that's a motivating factor for you to continue to do good works, what's wrong with pride?
Right. And then there's that argument. Yeah, then there's that argument that people make that's like, you can't do anything without a little bit of pride in it, or a little bit of self things that you're doing for yourself, right? And so it's everywhere. So is that sin there so that you debase yourself so much? Like, did they label that a sin so that you put yourself down so much that you can't be, like, you have to give all that glory to this God person, like it cannot be you. You didn't do that. You're nothing. You need God. You know what I mean? So there's that like idea behind it.
Yeah, that's a big part of a religious perspective, is that narrative of being kind of this ultimate vessel for God and not taking any credit for the things that you do. And the accomplishments that you have and the failures that you have, they kind of like, glory to God. But at the same time, I think, there's a flip side to that of taking responsibility for your actions, and having that responsibility taken away at the same time. If you take credit, or if you don't take credit for your successes, and neither for your failures or your mistakes or the wrongs that you do, then I think there's a danger in making it so black and white, having this kind of false dichotomy.
Right.
Well, one thing I found, because I wanted to make sure that I was fully prepared for this, I went and looked up what the sin actually meant in old times, because it's like a lot of Christian things, a lot of religious things. It seems to have morphed into something different as time went by. And what I read said that vanity was actually more like overconfidence. Like the actual sin was essentially religious Dunning-Kruger, right?
Okay.
Yeah. So that was actually like, it seemed to be that excessive confidence in oneself is what the sin was.
So to the point that it was false confidence, is that?
Or detrimental.
That's okay. So you thought you were capable of things that weren't necessarily capable?
Right. Yeah, at least that's what I read.
That's still interesting though, because if that's the case, if the sin is thinking that you're capable of things that you aren't currently capable of, it doesn't allow for aptitude, for increasing aptitudes. There's many things in my life that I haven't been capable of, whether I've been confident that I could be or not, that I learned to develop a capability in because I pursued an education in that topic, or or I pursued a physical goal, that aptitudes can change.
Yeah.
So I don't understand why it's a sin. It could be my ignorance. I understand why from interpersonal perspective it's not ideal, because
Right.
it's off-putting. It's off-putting when somebody thinks they're, gives off the impression that they think that they're better than you. But I don't think that it's a mortal.
Right.
It's just
I think from my perspective, for like with what I'm thinking, if you think about the way that God relates to humans, then like God is supposed to be everything, and humans are supposed to be subservient and always putting all good things onto him, and he's the source of all good things. And if you think about like the story of God and Satan, Satan's sin was pride. He thought that he was equal to or better than God, and that's why he was cast out. So, Christians are supposed to not be like that. And I think certain Christians like take this to like different extents. So some Christians will just be like super down on themselves, and then that they'll just say that that's just humility, but that's not necessarily a healthy way to live your life, I don't think.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
No.
And I do understand what Kate was saying from what she read. Is sort of, if you do put action on that overconfidence, it can be dangerous. Right. So if you say you can do something that you can't actually do, you can put other people at risk. And so maybe that might be what they were trying to avoid. I'm not sure. But I do understand, like, how is it something that, is a sin? And also what you said, Rach, how it, you, if you think yourself equal to God, but that's like a lot of pride, right? That's a ton. Like,
but I think like any pride is bad.
That's true. I mean, if that was the impression that, that we got in school, it was
Yeah, just to piggyback off of that, I remember our Christian school and Christian church was really big on C.S. Lewis, and we read a lot of and talked about C.S. Lewis a lot. So in Mere Christianity, that's the fundamental argument that Lewis makes in that book, is that pride is the root of all sin, because, like you were saying, Rachel, the idea is that if we're prideful, then we are basically imitating Satan and imitating Satan's sin. But then also he makes the argument that all of the other sins are rooted in pride, because all sinning is about us trying to us thinking that we're better than what God has dictated for us, and that the decisions that we make are superior to what the Bible says. So I was really scared of the sin of pride.
So that goes back to Courtney's argument too, I think, which I think is the most valid one, is that it's about not giving credit to God for the things that you do that are worth taking credit for. And if you have to give credit to God for all the things that you do or that are worth taking credit for, then how come you don't have to? Because that would mean logically that those things are out of your control and had nothing to do with you if you're giving him credit. How come on the flip side of that coin, he's not accountable for the things that you do wrong?
Yeah. And there's this sense that that if you don't take responsibility for wrongdoing of other people, is that just as much not your fault as the good things that you do and the things that are worthy of pride? So it's a spectrum that I think has equal weight of harming people or things like that. Because if God is this kind of all powerful thing, then that's the point of it. Because they talk about how like the bad things in the world are because of free will, but they don't add in the positive things being part of that free will, part of our just natural humanity versus
that's
being like stemming from God.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I really like that. That's something to think about. So I just want to point out that when we talk about these things, pride, vanity, the other sins, gluttony, lust,
Sloth, my favorite.
Sloth, yeah. Laziness. When we talk about
Sloth
these,
love chunk.
Gluttony and sloth go well together, actually.
Yes. Not pride so much with the
yeah, that leads to pride quite a bit. Yeah.
But anyway, I just want to say that we're coming from this sense of how we felt. They were I cannot say anything right now. How we felt the Christian church was enforcing them. And so when we think about the definitions of things, it's important to know what those definitions are, but also I want to like say, you know, this is where we came from, and this is how people made us feel, and this is how the church made us feel. And so we're coming from that place. So coming from that idea, did you women feel like this disparagement of being prideful affected you as a female?
That's interesting. I don't know if I would say that it necessarily affected me as a female, but I would say that it affected me. Certainly. I'm not sure in this particular instance. The lust one, I could say, like, I could go on for a long time.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
That one affected me as a female, but yes. but when it comes to pride and vanity, I think it more so affected me in the way that motivating me to go forward. So if I felt I had to give God credit for everything and follow His direction, and His direction is so ambiguous because it's not actually there. So you're just
right.
So
it gets me every time.
Right? You're looking for a direction of what to do, and God's going to lead you, but there's nothing there. So you're just looking for anything, and you can't be prideful about the things that you did, and you can't use that as a motivation because then that's just feeding your pride. So, that's not a good thing. So you need to go towards something that's not going to feed your pride, because being humble would be the best thing. So you need to go for something difficult. But then if you overcome that difficult thing, you can't feel pride about that. So it's like a vicious cycle of not knowing, am I supposed to be doing this? It's making me feel pride. Does that mean that it's bad? Should I go for something different? You're constantly looking for messages that aren't there and trying to hold to a standard that doesn't make any goddamn fucking sense while adhering to that. So I think it affects you as a person. I'm not sure how to transition it into, specifically as a woman in this instance, but I think everybody must feel that to a certain degree if they're devout. Or were devout.
I think that women are more assumed to be dealing with vanity more than men. If I said that well, meaning like, I think it's more often assumed that women are the ones that are more vain than men. And I think in actuality, it's probably pretty equal. But there's the outside forces of body image and things like that are going to be stronger. So we're going to have more pressure, but I think vanity and pride coming from us, as in reaction to that pressure, it might be lower, because of that sense of, that there, again, I can quote this, or reference this TED Talk that I mentioned in one of our first videos that we did, our talks about transgender woman who was speaking on a TED stage about transitioning from male to female, and having lived most of her life as a male, and just moving through the world, the way that her self-image changed, the way that, when people assume that you don't know what you're talking about enough, you start to wonder if you actually know what you're talking about. And it's something that men aren't really confronted with as much. So in that way, I feel like having all that pressure that I think it is targeted more at women than men, may have that opposite effect of the assumption of like vanity in the genders.
That's super interesting, because I didn't think about aesthetic, because there's so much pressure on women to fulfill a specific aesthetic that you want to strive for it, because there's pressure for you to do it, to be accepted. And then when you do, you're immediately perceived as being vain, or if you do, you're perceived as being vain just for having that aesthetic.
So this is one way that I've sort of lucked out, because being basically a not particularly femme lesbian, I can get away with a lot more than I think most straight chicks can do.
Okay, how so? That's an interesting statement. How?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of things. I mean, for one thing, nobody expects me to put on makeup. for one thing. The way if I wanted to dress like full on punk, sort of like street punk sort of thing, people just go, well, she's a dyke, let it go. Right?
That's also not necessarily okay, though.
Well,
you're having preconceptions about how you should present.
Well, actually, no. I mean, what I'm saying is it gives me a lot of freedom.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because if I wanted
you can go all over the board.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but it seems like, at least in the mainstream, the expectation of straight women is to like be very, very femme.
Yeah.
And there's certain expectations that honestly don't really get put on me that much.
Yeah, I found that interesting, like, balance in the workplace of if you're too feminine in the workplace as a feminine straight woman, if you're too feminine, if you dress up too much in the workplace, then you're not taken as seriously sometimes. And if you dress down and deemed as not attractive but still female, you're not quite one of the guys. You're not quite in that. It's almost like you're regarded even less. So it's this strange balancing act. Yeah, it's strange, like this strange balancing act. You can't just be yourself and wear what you want. But
and you feel it. I think we feel it very separately from the way other people perceive it too. The other day, I've been to 2 interviews in the last couple months, and the first interview I knew I would be interviewing with men. Right. And so I definitely dress differently. This next interview that I went to, I was like, oh, I'm interviewing with women. Like, I calmed down. And it's weird because there's definitely, if I was like going up for fashion or something, or like a different, like if it wasn't a college, this is where I'm applying, I feel like it would be a little bit different. But I did notice and took note of the fact that, whoa, like I do change my my interview dress, from those 2. And how vain is that? Like, thinking about yourself and how you have to sort of treat 2 different sets of people is really, it seems really vain. It seems really self, aware, and not necessarily a positive way.
Yeah. If I can piggyback off of that, so, I am in academia. And so you would think that academia would at least be better in terms of, not subscribing to these gender norms. But I find that that's still very much the case, unfortunately, in a lot of ways. And in talking about interviews, I'm going to be going on the job market soon. So I've gone to a lot of job talk meetings, and it's just fascinating how much of the conversation for women revolves around how you should dress in a job interview, and the men don't have that same kind of pressure put on them. And in fact, there was a male faculty member at one meeting I remember who basically said, just show up and act like you're cool and chill. And then another female academic called him out and said, women can't do that. We have different expectations put on us, which obviously isn't fair. But, she was just basically, saying you can say that because you're a straight white man. If a woman, if a woman goes to a job interview in jeans and a frumpy shirt and, just acts really cool, they're probably not going to get the job. So even in very progressive environments, there's still that pressure placed on us for sure.
Yeah, because you can't be too attractive.
Right.
You can't be too sexually appealing.
Right.
But you also can't be completely, not sexually appealing.
Right.
Which is
figure out what the balance is and then walk that line between the 2.
Yep.
Otherwise, somebody's going to say what you're wearing is completely inappropriate.
Oh, sure.
It's going to be like, she didn't even try.
Yeah, I do think that if you have a certain professionalism in your look, you can be sexy and get the job, right? And because of this cool, like that like there is something to be said about the sexy smart woman that like rises above all. But do you know how hard it is to get to her?
Oh,
Do you know how hard it is to get
about me? I really appreciate that. So
I
sweet.
mean, I tried to keep it subtle, Shannon, but
That's a balanced measured description of me specifically.
I think for me, I always felt this pressure to be a certain way, but instead of like trying, I was like, well, I don't think I can be that, and I just didn't try.
yeah.
So like, I have not invested
I've
a
been
lot
there.
of time or effort into like fashion or trying to look nice or whatever. I really don't care that much, but I always felt like I should care, and I don't know. When I was 13, I changed rooms in my house, and I didn't have a mirror in the room. And my mom was like, "Rachel, do you want a mirror in your room?" And I was like, "No, I don't want one." And so I didn't have one in my room because I was like, "Oh, well, I don't want to be vain. I don't want to look at myself all the time." So I don't know exactly why I did that, but yeah, in the past couple weeks, I've been taking a lot of selfies. And when I do dress up, I'm like, hey, I look nice. And before, I like when I was a Christian, I wouldn't have done that at all.
Aww.
You wouldn't have done it at all, really.
Well, maybe, but I don't know. I think every kid goes through those times where you like take a million selfies and you're kind of obsessed with the way you look. I think I just kind of, well, maybe not everyone. I don't know. I'm out of my sisters that went through that.
There were no selfies when I was a kid.
Sorry. I'm generalizing from my sisters to everybody.
I had to wait 4 days before I knew how that picture.
Oh my god.
This is what Polaroids are for.
I hope our face was even in one of them.
That was so good.
Well, I mean, along similar lines, though, we are all on YouTube. We all have cameras pointed at us right now. I mean, how much work do you go through before you start making a video, for example? I mean, I know that I'll certainly do some hair maintenance, if nothing else, before I start making a video.
Yeah. I less now than initially. Initially, I was like, people are going to see me. Today it's 187 degrees, and I was just like, I'm putting on a hairband, and it is. But I also, I made sure I put on mascara and a little bit of lipstick before I went on because I wanted to, like, to be honest, I wanted to put forth an effort. I don't want anybody to look at me and think, ew. And oh my God, the comment sections. Like, yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, some of my peers are male YouTubers, and many of them don't even show their faces. A lot of them are avatars, essentially, which is the big difference. But even the ones that aren't, their comments tend to be more about what they're saying,
right?
Or somebody's mad. Like they'll get a bit more of a physical threat sometimes. But I will get just overtly, explicitly sexual comments, or just really visceral, nasty sexual criticism. Like both sides of so it is a different world. Anybody who thinks that it's not, it's just in denial.
That's funny. Yeah, Heather and I had like a whole conversation about whether or not we would do YouTube or podcasting, or how we wanted to develop our content.
Sure.
And we like talked about this for a good 15 minutes. Like, well, we're two women, so that's appealing, but we're also two women. So it was sort of this like, okay, like where do we want to pull this? And so we decided to be like a faceless podcast to start, so that we could get our voice out there first. And of course, it's not going to matter to the people who say the comments anyway, eventually. But it's definitely huge for us. And do men really have to do that? I kind of wish we had a man here to be like, no.
The men in the comments.
Yeah. Well, you can also see that with all kinds of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I don't know how many of you folks watched my videos from like a few years ago, but I spent several years basically being an avatar myself. I mean, like I said, my training's in animation. I have this character named Sandra who would basically do like these animated emotes that followed basically what I was saying, sort of the emotions of what I was saying. But most of that was just because I was getting sick and tired of being told how ugly I am when I'm on camera, because I got that a lot, believe me. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, I've started wearing glasses in my videos because I finally have some that are flattering. I wore glasses all through my childhood and hated it. I just never looked good in them. And so, yeah, there's definitely, I can understand the urge to be an avatar just based on how you look and how people react to it.
Wow. You know what? To bring it back to what we were talking about initially, all of these comments that we've made about, what it's like to be a woman and walking the line between vanity and just, complete self-confidence annihilation.
Yeah.
What if these things are happening to you and you're constantly receiving the message that for you to think anything other than just that you're plain, or to want to be perceived as anything other than that means that you're vain, which means God's not happy with you.
Right.
How do you grapple with that? Like you're receiving messages that are emotionally dissonant, that are like causing you traumatic emotional experience. And on top of that, you're being told that, you should be okay with that because to do otherwise would be vanity. And that's not okay. Like that just hit me, and that's bad. Like
there's been a lot of testimony of women that have been in cults that were really constrictive, and something like wearing lipstick as a young girl. The male elders saying that they were distracted by that, and so it's a very, that sort of vanity is kind of tied into women's temptation of men. In a lot of contexts, I think that it's that when you're talking about a religious context, it's usually very there's a lot of sexuality around that, a lot of language around the gender roles and the importance of purity and all of those things.
As a teenager, I remember thinking about boys, and then in youth group or whatever, I'd be like, oh, that boy's kind of cute, that boy's kind of cute. But then I'd pray that I wouldn't distract them during worship, because I like, oh my God. Because and so you're saying what you're describing that experience, and I'm telling you that's kind of what I experienced. I don't know if I felt a traumatic guilt about that. About other things, yes, not about that, but that definitely goes through your mind because you're taught you don't want to distract other people, and that's part of the reason why you don't dress provocatively, like modesty and all those sorts of things, is because you don't want to distract the men who are visual creatures. And it's a lot of stress.
Yes,
it's a lot of stress to put on girls who are just trying to figure out things when they're going through puberty.
Yeah. And there's this I like to think of these things in regards to biology, right? And so when someone compliments us, whether it's our looks or our smarts or anything that we feel pride over, we get endorphins. It feels good, it's positive. And so there's this weird fight between the religious ideas and biology that's happening that's really funky. And I think it's in a lot of the other sins too: gluttony, lust, sloth. Those things are look, that's biology sometimes, and it's the extremes. And I know, yes, they are talking about the extremes, the good ones, but when people are enforcing these things, generally they generalize them, and they say, don't be prideful at all, that's all bad. And it's just my biology is telling me to have a little bit of confidence, to have a little bit of faith in myself.
12-year-old girls going through puberty, they need some friggin' confidence. They're probably they need all the confidence they can get. And
I wish we could
if you're telling these girls who are figuring out who they are and what they want to wear and things like that, but you take all of that away from them, take that self-identity of of what do I think looks good on me, and kind of imposing your idea of what they should look like. That's a really, that's already coming from all sides. And religious, affiliation is supposed to be a sanctuary for people. And at least for, some groups, it can be just as much of that type of pressure, unfortunately. Not all of them, but it's not a good place when you're already that vulnerable, and it's already, something that's so central to who people believe that they are. It's terrible to put that on them in that place as well.
Yeah, and I was going to add, so I agree with what you're saying, Courtney, and to add to that, to take it on a broader level, not just about appearances, but I really felt this way about other things like accomplishments and intellect in growing up. And it's taken me a long time to move past that. And I think I'm still not fully there, although I'm trying to get there. But I'll still, sort of react viscerally to people posting on social media, promoting themselves or saying, I did this thing and I was really successful. And I tend to avoid posting those kinds of things on Facebook and other social media outlets, although I'm trying to get better. And I did, when I passed my preliminary examination for the PhD, I did post something and I was like, I worked really hard and I'm proud that I accomplished this, but that was such a big deal for me. So I think, and again, I think this is for me, in my experience, it was definitely very much a gendered thing. In my environment, women were supposed to be, demure and modest and humble. And I watched women in the church that Christine and I went to who are very smart and very successful, kind of perform that modesty. So I do think there's more pressure, certainly in my experience, there was more pressure on the women to perform that kind of humbleness that I'm still trying to move past.
Yeah. Kate, I was wondering, how was it being raised in a secular environment? How did that sort of play a part?
Well, I mean, with my parents, it kind of didn't, just because, my parents did whatever they wanted dress-wise either. I mean, one day they might be in like tie-dye. The next day my dad might be in a tie. But in school, on the other hand, that was a different story. It's very similar to what I've been hearing you folks say, but there wasn't that sort of supernatural pressure to it. There wasn't that like God will get you if you are too proud or like too full of yourself or something. Your peers will, but you don't have that celestial father figure coming after you, like in your fears, your dreams, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that's the idea of being lukewarm. That pressure. I was always scared of being lukewarm. Like, okay, I'm allowed to have a little bit of confidence if I give the glory to God, but if I think I did it myself, then I end up in this lukewarm thing. Like it's kind of me and it's kind of God, and he's going to spit me out of his mouth. I've always had that sort of thought of like, yeah, don't be lukewarm in any of these sins or in any of these accomplishments for yourself. Like, don't, make sure you're giving full glory to God. And it's just like,
how do you know the balance though? That must be impossible. Like,
yeah,
how do you find the balance?
Well, it depends on where you live.
Just enough credit to God that he's okay, but I can still be kind of content, but and confident in myself.
Yeah.
I've often thought, just looking at all of this from the outside, that the whole idea, you were talking about biology before, the whole idea seems to be take these things that are so natural and tell people they're horrible and they have to apologize for all of them, but they're so natural that they're going to keep happening. You're talking about that cycle, and it was a way to keep people in the church, to make them psychological slaves who can never meet the standard they're supposed to meet, but feel that they have to. Like, that's the way it's always looked to me when I first started thinking about it.
Mm-hmm. Like it's definitely the oppression of it. Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, it keeps you constantly striving that you need that glory, that you need that assistance, because who you are constantly is going to be going against what you think you're supposed to be. So if they make it these moral guidelines that are actually moral guidelines, then if somebody lives a good life, then they may eventually feel like they don't need the church or need God to be moral. But if you make it part of someone's human nature, then they're constantly going to be fighting that within themselves, and it's just terrible. terrible.
And I mean, from the Christian advocate sense, you can sort of think, if you are giving the glory to God, then it does feel like a blessing. So there is some sort of feeling of good there. Like if you really succeed, you're like, wow, I've really glorified God. And so there is this, I think it can be balanced in terms of not as oppressive, you know what I mean? But I definitely can see from the outsider's perspective, it can, and even inside, it feels oppressive. Because go ahead, Rachel.
I think it really depends on the person, because different like people are affected differently, like very differently. So
that's true.
For me, like this whole vanity thing, I mean, I think I just didn't really put that much effort into things, so it wasn't a problem that I was succeeding. But if I did, I didn't really feel that great about it. But anyways, I think for me, this, what you're saying, Kate, about having like natural human things happen to you and having those identified as bad and having that be a thing that keeps you within the system. For me, that was definitely the case with like sexual thoughts and things like that. So, but I can see how for other people, something like pride and this whole like psychological blow we're talking about would like affect people really negatively.
Well, it also seems a little bit hypocritical, where it's like, you're not allowed to be proud, but look at how much glory we have to give to God. Like God is having everyone bolster his ego up like you wouldn't believe.
Oh, but he
pride is a bad thing.
Vanity is a bad thing. We're supposed to be like him, and we're supposed to be like him, but we can't want to
think about that.
We like him, but
that's funny.
And then we also feel pride in a weird way too, because then we feel like we're set apart from the rest of the world. So, and so I also experienced that, where I was like, okay, I can't be prideful. I'm going to give all the glory to God. But then also I would then feel superior to other people around me who weren't Christians, because I had this hidden secret knowledge that they didn't have, and I was going to heaven and they weren't.
Oh yeah. I remember like my parents' friends like congratulating me for understanding and knowing the truth at my young age. Oh yeah. And it's because I was raised with a very kind of home-based, more like specific, less organized version of it. And so it was very specific, and my family didn't really agree with a lot of organized religion churches and a lot of the things that they taught. So it was a very unique perspective and religion among even the Christians. So it was like this elevated sense of, we know the truth beyond not only the non-Christians, but most of Christians. But at the same time, that revelation and that gift was a revelation given from God to us. So it wasn't us who had discovered it. It was revealed to us, and we couldn't control, and human beings couldn't control whether they had that revealed to them or not. So it was just like really, it was messed up, but it was like, but I do remember that sense of pride, like Heather was saying about, and Rachel was saying about, like, I have this truth that no one around me understands, and
how do you differentiate that from somebody else who thinks that they have God's different denomination, who has who believes it's just like, how do you differentiate that? These are the questions that took me out. It's like,
that, me too. Me too. Yeah.
My disagreements with other people on the way to interpret the Bible, and I was devout, like to the point that like I was an altar girl. I carried the cross and lit the candles and prepared the Eucharist, and like, you needed to come to me to get to God because I wanted to be your gateway to God, because that's how much I loved him. Like, I will give you the body of Christ. Anyway, so like,
I've got it. You don't have it. I have it.
I have it, and I will give it to you. That's
I'm the gatekeeper.
From me. So anyway, but I came to the point that I was like, I had to reconcile the fact, I read the Bible cover to cover instead of just spot reading it, which is a big difference. big difference. I suggest everybody does it. If you're a Christian, just read it cover to cover with an open mind. Just do it. Read it cover to cover. Please just do it. But anyway, I did that, and other people, I started having questions, and other people would have valid interpretations that were drastically different from mine.
Right.
And then I'd have to go back. I'd be like, wait a minute. We're equally right in the fact that we're both fucking wrong.
Nice.
But we're equally right about that. We both have ground to stand on for these things. So when it comes to Revelation, and I know that it just took me off topic, but it hit me. Like, how is your revelation more valid, substantively, quantifiably, objectively than anybody else's? Nice. But how do you know?
Yeah, and that's another thing that's like bringing it back to vanity. This idea of how do you define vanity? How do you find what is appropriate amount of self-confidence and what is pride, and what turns to pride and vanity? If you're looking at the 7 deadly sins perspective, then it would be whether God deems it to be that or not. But how do we, without that sense of God, define that for ourselves?
That's very
if I'm going to define pride, there's this big old parade that happens in the summer with the rainbow flag.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Think about that for a second. Whoa.
For me, I think a huge part of my Christianity was controlling what I felt like, or trying to, and controlling what I thought. And that was like, I did that a lot. And so I think now that I don't believe that I have to do that, it's really nice to just accept the emotions and the feelings that are happening to me, and having the knowledge that they're normal. Other people feel this way too. And just, if I do something that's good and someone compliments me on it, I can just say, well, thank you. And I can feel those feelings. Yeah. And like, that's really nice. So I think, I don't know, like, what is pride? I mean, I think feeling good about what you've done and those feelings, I don't think we should say, oh, don't feel those feelings. But maybe like what we think about ourselves should be balanced by certain things. I don't know.
Yeah, humility. Well, I mean, if you can find the good balance between pride and humility, then you're solid. And but in the Bible, in the Christian faith, at least how I felt was I didn't see that balance. You know, it felt like, no, humility is the only way. You cannot have any pride. You should only be humble. You should only say, you know what, when people congratulate you over something, an accomplishment you had, you're supposed to say, you know what, it wasn't me. Give the glory to God. And so that extreme sense of humility is what I think really put us down, you know. And I think that's where you find the balance in the secular world. You just have to be willing to say, I'm still teachable, right? But I still can be happy about what I've accomplished and proud of what I've accomplished. So there's this meekness, you know, thing. So I wanted to go through everybody and hear how you violated the sin of pride in the last few weeks, maybe since our last Women of Deconversion. I want to hear how you sinned. So confession time, right? But except I want,
oh dear,
but confession in the way that, like, you know what? I don't have to feel bad about this anymore, and it's okay for me to have pride. So yeah, so tell us something that you're proud of. Courtney, why don't you start? Like, think.
Oh, me? There's the humility.
Shannon's gonna take too long, so.
Do me laugh. I'm proud of so many things.
I'm characterized as long-winded myself. So actually I did some public speaking this past, like, maybe last weekend, about sex education and kind of the problems around abstinence-only education versus comprehensive. And so I had to, like, stand up on a podium and give this talk and talk to some public officials, and it was really cool. And people people were, saying that I did a good job. And, that's something that's good. It keeps me feeling like I deserve a place at that podium to be one of the voices fighting for this cause, and Shannon kind of touched on that a little bit, is that if you feel like you belong there and you feel like you belong, that you're a contributor, a valid contributor to this movement, then you will be motivated to be one of the people making the difference. If you feel like you're not going to do well, or you're not going to be good for what you're trying to accomplish, then you may just step aside, and that's not good.
What about you, Heather? Anything you've been proud of in the last? Any sin? Any drastic, prideful sin or vain sin?
Well, yeah. So I was gonna say I am getting better again at like being proud of my accomplishments and being proud of my hard work and saying that out loud. So yes, I actually finished a draft of my PhD dissertation. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of all the work I put into that. So there's that. And then also to go with the vanity thing, I'm also getting better at just being confident about my body and confident that I am attractive, and and because again, that was something I was, as we've been talking about, that was something I just wasn't allowed to think or feel when I was younger. And so yes, I went to a concert last weekend and I dressed very sexily and was proud of it and happy and knew I was sexy and enjoyed that. So, and this is such a big deal. I just saying that out loud, it feels so good.
Yay, good.
That's like with the dissertation thing. God didn't do that fucking research. Heather did that fucking research.
Yeah.
Do you know how hard that shit is?
Yep.
It's so hard.
Kate, is there anything that you're like, but this has never felt like a sin to you, right? Or maybe it has. Maybe you're like have been too prideful. Yeah. So, but yeah, but let's hear your.
There have been times when I thought I might piss other people off by saying, check me out. But I've never, it never really felt like much of a sin, no. But if there's anything that I've done recently that could even remotely qualify, like I said before, I'm trained as an animator. That's where most of my education is. And my videos have traditionally had animated intros. Well, I decided that I wanted to have, rather than just use the same one over and over till I got bored with it, which would happen in about 7-8 months, maybe a year, and then making a new one, I decided I wanted to make a whole bunch of them all at once so I could cycle through those and keep people from getting bored.
Nice.
Right? Now, the last couple have been, let me tell you, pretty awesome. Right? And I actually, like, there are some people that I share them with before I show them to the general public to just, like, to gauge reactions. And so I uploaded them to YouTube as unlisted files, right? Unlisted videos, and kind of watched them several times my own darn self. So yeah, if there's anything I'm proud of, it's my animation. And I definitely in the last week or two, engaged in a bit of self-congratulation.
Good job.
Very cool. Rach, what about you?
I don't know. You guys are doing such awesome things.
What, you were growing up really well, so don't worry about it.
Okay, in the past month, I started going to counseling, and I'm learning a lot about myself, and I'm proud of that because apparently, I think a lot of people wouldn't take that step, and I've really tried to engage in my own like self-improvement, and it's been a thing, this whole deconversion thing, but I want to attack it, not like I want to take on my own like health and this process and take ownership of it and not just kind of like let it happen. Like there's a lot that just needs to happen on its own. But anyways, I guess I'm proud of that in my approach.
That is something to be proud of that. Not a lot of people are active contributors in their own mental health. So be proud of that or recognize that they should be.
And
and this process you've been going through of your deconversion and everything, that's not an easy thing as well. We've talked about that too. Of it's a very very difficult thing to to work through, especially with you know, how deep rooted you have been. So that's there's a lot to be proud of with that.
Yeah, and then especially with us, like you started here. It's uplift Rachel hour. But you did start like, you know, shy and nervous about like sharing your story, and now you're like, yeah, you know, this is a thing. I do this, and it's awesome. And so yeah, definitely huge to be proud. So I'm glad you're proud of that. All right, Shannon, you go ahead. I just, you know, I'm teasing you.
Well, I did. I don't even want to be proud. I did a lot of research for the past 2 edited videos that I uploaded on the myth of the unhappy atheist and why it's so dark in the atheist closet. And through that research, in order to present it, I wanted to make sure that I presented resources for people that were going through deconversion and had issues that needed to be addressed, so that they would know what resources to reach out to.
Nice.
Through that process, I found through my friends Thomas Westbrook and Drew, genetically modified skeptic, I found the Recovering from Religion Foundation. And in the past few days, I've been in contact with Daniel Ray's, I think is his name. Let me look at it actually. Yeah, Daryl Ray.
Okay.
I've been in contact with Daryl Ray, and he and I have connected, and he's going to come on this channel, and we're going to kind of work on some stuff together to help promote recovering from religion. And I'm going to do whatever I can to contribute my psychological expertise in the field of communication theory specifically, because I work and focused in perceptual cognition and communication, to offer that in order to help reach more people who need it.
That's really cool.
That's awesome. I love Daryl Ray and the recovery from really.
Right. Yeah. And I just found out about him not that long ago. Through the course of researching the last few videos that I had done. So, and I really love what they're doing, and I think it's insanely valuable and necessary, especially considering the realm of psychology doesn't study a lot of deconversions, right? Yeah. So it's still a relatively new field, and yeah. So I know I probably took too long, Christine, but I'm proud.
No, I'm teasing. You know, it's because Shannon like manages so much, and I just am so impressed by her that I know she has a lot to be proud of, and so I'm like waiting for her to. No, I'm not covering. I swear to God.
No,
but yeah, I hope you're blushing.
Little bit.
But yeah, anyway, it's just awesome to be able to embrace these things that are sins, you know, especially when they're awesome accomplishments, like helping people psychologically recover and making baller-ass animations and getting through a journey, you know, that's difficult, and standing up for abstinence, or for and not standing up against abstinence only education.
To be abstinent, that's amazing. And it's
totally. No, but like, but I think these things are like, are you kidding me? Like, how can this be a sin? And you know, this is so striking to me sometimes when I talk to Christians who are still Christians. I think, like, how do you live in that paradigm?
It's like why is God offended by this?
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Why does God hate this so much that if I'm like proud of, you know, my dissertation or whatever, I'm going to end up in hell? Like, come on. Like, really? Is it that bad? I mean, we as parents, if any of us have, I think 1, 2, Kate, do you have any kids?
I have a cat.
Mom. Oh, a cat. Okay. So like when your cat does something, you know, you're like, yeah, you know, you ate all your food. No, you know it. But like, I want
you didn't scratch the couch. Yes.
I was gone for 8 hours and everything is in the same place. This is amazing. No, but as a parent, you know, and a lot of people reflect, like, God treats us as his children, and you know, we're supposed to be seen that way. It's like, I want my child to be proud of her life, proud of her journey. You know, I want her to be humble and meek too, but that's a balance. It's not this extreme sense. And you know what? If she thinks she can do something that she can't do, that's okay. I just want to help her, guide her. It's not, I would never condemn her to something as like fiery and scary as the weather. See Shannon over here. No, but hell, and so it's just so hard to back them up, back that faith up,
Yeah, and I think Kate was kind of bringing in like the definitional, but I think that there's still like there's such a discrepancy between what the church may present to the world as what they mean by something, and how it actually gets internalized by the followers, and the language that's used around it. And so, I know Rachel and Heather and Christine have all talked about having these residual psychological effects from stuff that may not have been as overt in other groups, but in their group and in the way that they internalized and interpreted things, it really deeply affected them. Maybe not this topic, but a lot of topics. And so, it's difficult to gauge, at least for me too. I wasn't in a really overt organized religion type of group as a child. So I kind of look to them of how some of these things affect people who are in those type of more restrictive organized religions. Just that the topics that we're going to be talking about in the next while is it's interesting, the difference between kind of the actual experience of some people, and then it's just kind of a spectrum of how you actually internalize it, and if it negatively affects you or not.
It's almost like religion's subjective or something.
Maybe, possibly. And I did want to add this, maybe a last thing before we close, but not a little bit of time on this. I noticed that when I was young, that men didn't get as disparaged for being prideful, and that's classically like through social our culture. Like they're not disparaged for feeling accomplished, and women definitely not that they can't accomplish things, but there's a question mark if they do. And so that sort of duality there between like, okay, men can be prideful. Is that because God is a man, or, and I noticed that in the church a lot. There was a lot of pride in the men in our church. And
that's interesting, because I think in my Christian circles, the men did receive that messaging, like that they shouldn't be prideful either. So I guess it depends.
Maybe. No, I think they received that message, but you could see, I don't know, I just saw pride, I guess, in men more than women.
Yeah, I would, because often, I see this all the time. And again, even still, that men will sometimes say something that sounds politically correct, right? But they don't necessarily perform that. And this isn't just a problem with the church, although I agree with Christine. I had that experience as well in our church. But again, I'm in a liberal environment now, and this is still a problem where men will say that they're woke and they'll talk about feminist theory, but then they will still dominate conversations and cut women off, and and et cetera, and sort of perform these behaviors, and they're not necessarily aware that they've been socialized to behave that way. So yes, I agree. And in our church, I felt very similarly. Like yes, officially the message was no one should be prideful, but it still in practice felt like there was more pressure on us as women to be humble.
Yeah. I haven't felt that too much in the secular community, at least from the men that I've interacted with. So, but I can understand how it can be in academia.
I didn't find it in academia either, personally. It was just different. I mean, I was out of the church in my early 20s.
Yeah.
So that when I started living my adult life, at the point where you start to take note of these things, I wasn't really in the fold so much when I was starting to assert myself as an adult. So I can't relate to that experience. And I also wasn't. I was in a more liberal church, perhaps. I was an Anglican, and yeah, it was more of a liberal environment in the church, which is all of this stuff is really interesting to me because I'm kind of akin to Kate in certain aspects because I was never like I'd always believed in science and evolution, and I was always told that it doesn't contradict with anything, and I was always equal rights, and I was told that didn't contradict with anything. Basically, I was allowed to kind of have these thoughts up to a point. There was a point, and it turns out that point was gay rights and gay marriage and women being priests. that was the point. But up until that point, it was allowed to wash, and I didn't really challenge it by actually reading the scriptures myself. Right. But I never found that dichotomy with the male expectation, but perhaps it was my own individual initiative because I walk into every room like I belong there, and if you don't think that I do, you better get out of my room. So yeah, maybe it's just a personality differential that I didn't come up against.
Yeah,
so, I'm not sure whether this quite qualifies or not, but okay, I'm adopted. And one thing that is common among adoptees is to have these fantasies about who your real parents are, who your birth parents are. Now, you'd think that most kids would be like, oh, clearly my parents are deposed royalty. I'm a princess and I'll come back someday to take me back to the kingdom. But no, actually far more common among adoptees is my parents are space aliens and they're going to come and take me back to the home world. I spent a lot of time begging for that to happen, right? But there is a certain element of look at how much more badass I am than everyone else. I'm a princess. I'm an alien.
Nice.
There is a certain amount of my life is so much cooler than you guys based on nothing, absolutely nothing.
Yeah. I can't wait till the headline comes out. All Scientologists are orphans.
All right, well, we're going to have to do closing thoughts, I think, guys, because we're actually a little over time, and I've got to go, unfortunately. This is
have a cat to feed.
So, yes, that's right. Kate's got a cat to feed. Yeah. I just want to reiterate for everybody that came in late that we are hosting the Women of Deconversion, and you can find them on the Secular Hangouts channel, and the link is in the description. And it is the first Monday of every month that they do these discussions. And I just stole them for this Monday. I stole them, and I stole Kate's. So thank you guys all so much for coming on the channel. Does anybody have any closing thoughts that they'd like to share?
Subscribe to my channel or else. So,
or else. Some kick-ass animations on the way.
Ditto, Heather, and I would love if you guys listened to Forsaking Faith and reviewed it. Please review. review, and comment. I want to hear. And also, Heather and I invite people to share artwork, like poems that they've written and pieces of artwork for our thumbnail that pertains to your journey of deconversion. So if you want to send that over to forsakingfaith@gmail.com, we'd love some awesome poetry or thoughts or things like that. So
yes. So forsakingfaith@gmail.com, and the podcast is Forsaking Faith, and it's on iTunes and Spotify, and we have a Facebook page, Forsaking Faith.
So, a real actual final thought. It has been kind of interesting listening to everybody else because I don't have a deconversion story, right? I was raised secular. And I didn't have a lot to say just because I didn't have these same experiences. But at the same time, I kind of felt like either a control group or a devil's advocate, where it's like, yeah, here's what the rest of the world was like. Let's see a comparison. So I hope I was actually doing something useful here.
Yes, we love having you. Yes.
Yeah, and yeah, I don't know. I don't think people get the little chat things that we have, but I was mentioning in our little text thing that it's really great to have the perspective of someone who wasn't raised religious, because I'm usually the only like control control group, because I wasn't raised in like a really fundamentalist, organized religion kind of thing, and mine was kind of unusual. So there's a lot of like gender things that I didn't get, and so it is nice on these more kind of these other topics that I feel like I was affected by sometimes, to have somebody kind of help us get what is society and what is religious ideas, because we do kind of have those discussions a lot of like how much of this is one or the other. So it's been really, really great to have you on, Kate.
All right.
Thanks.
And thanks, Shannon, for hosting us. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay. It's interesting to me to think about how like my experience is different from all of you guys, and we each have our own unique experience, and even like within my own experience, it's interesting to think about all the different sources of ideas and how they all it like related to how I was affected and all those sorts of things. And when I was a Christian, I thought like it was one thing, like Christianity was one thing. And it's so interesting to hear all these different ideas and just expand my perspective and know that it's so diverse. And I think that's really cool. And you can find me at Rachel in Reality on YouTube. I do a Bible study there.
Bible podcast, by the way. Sorry, I just need to give props to Rachel's Bible study. You guys do an awesome Bible study on that.
Thank you. So
very measured and honest, and like really good to watch. I loved it.
Me and Daniel Earls and Cam Spires are going through the New Testament in chronological order. So we're starting with the epistles, and we're going to go through when scholars think that they were written in that order. So it's been really interesting. I hope you guys come and check it out.
Do it. Good. But hopefully within the next hour or so, I'll have links for everything in the description. You guys just need to Facebook message me the links and I'll put them in. Bionic Dance, I'll find your channel. I know where it is. Sorry. That one I'll find. And the Atheist Edge will be down there as well for you, Courtney. And yeah, so and Rachel, I have subscribed to both of your channels, so we'll be fine. All right. So Heather, did you say anything? Did everybody get a chance to say anything else? All right. Well, we're gonna end now. Thank you, guys. For those tuning in later, there will be more links in the description. For those tuning in now, the Secular Hangout links in the description. I will not accept excuses for you not subscribing. And I have a Patreon or whatever.
Well, in that case, put my Amazon wish list.
And Kate wants presents. I just need a new laptop to help with the channel.
On the topic about vanity and pride.
I don't know. I'm the worst YouTuber in the world. I don't even know. I'm sorry, guys. Thanks, chat. No, legitimately, as I do everything that you're supposed to do, I do almost the entire opposite of that. But thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm sorry, chat, that I wasn't super interacting with you. And thank you, Miss Snarky, for modding the chat. Miss Snarky is usually a part of this and will be on the next one, hopefully.
We miss you.
We miss you, Jen. We miss you, Mrs. Snarky. And thanks, Paul, for moderating the chat as well. I hope you guys were all good to each other. Thanks, guys. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.